All right, cool. So as you probably saw from the title of this video, the secret to never feeling guilty after falling off of your diet. So the whole premise around this conversation I wanted to have today, or this Facebook Live, um, was, I was having a conversation with the client the other day. This was Wednesday in her check-in, and she's about 3 weeks into the program, and because of where she started, we were actually able to start a fat loss phase right away with her. Typically, a lot of clients, they come to us and they've been, under eating for a long period of time. And if you do come into our program with that, like in that scenario, we have to bring your calories up first, kind of just make sure that, your metabolism is kind of quote unquote, running as efficiently as possible. That way you respond best to fat loss when we go into a fat loss phase. And also to make sure you have some like basic habits down and stuff first. But this client, because she was coming into a spot where, like coming into the program where her calorie intake was already pretty high, we were able to jump right into a fat loss phase with her. And in her check-in, or in a message she sent me, she was talking about how she was having a lot of guilt around days that she was maybe going over her calories, whether that was from food, like having, more calories from food than what her calorie goal was, or maybe from alcohol. Alcohol in her just regular daily life. She lives a lifestyle where she doesn't enjoy drinks here and there. And then especially, over the past week, alcohol from the holiday. So we were having this conversation. She was telling me how, she was feeling really guilty about going over her calories on some days. And so let's say like her calorie goal was 2,000 calories per day. And if she ended up hitting 2,200, 2,400, or maybe even 2,600, she would feel really guilty about it. And she'd really struggle with it. And this is something that I see a lot of people, just general people in everyday life. And then also a lot of our clients, when they first come into the program, they kind of struggle with this because they have a goal, they have a benchmark that they're trying to hit, the calorie range. And if they end up going over it, they feel like they failed and they feel guilty about it and just have a huge string of negative emotions associated with it. And you're listening, you might struggle with this too, where you might set out on a diet or you might, hire a coach and have a goal. And when you go over the goal, you feel guilty, maybe even feel afraid that they're going to scold you. If you do, then you probably need to find a new coach. But you might have this like strong emotional attachment to your goals and your actions. And you have a strong attachment to where you feel really good about yourself when you hit your daily goals, right? You feel really motivated, you feel excited. But then on the other hand, you also feel that huge extreme of emotions on the negative side of things on days where, maybe you don't hit your goals or you go over your calorie goal or you don't get your workout in or you don't hit your step goal. And we want to, like, having these good emotions, these positive feelings, when we succeed or we hit our calories or we hit our workouts or we hit our steps. Like, I don't want you to get the wrong idea and think that it's not okay to feel those feelings, because it definitely is, right? It's always a good thing, when we feel really good and we feel accomplished and proud of like the work that we put in or the changes that we're making day to day. But we want to make sure that like heightened emotional state that you're in, it doesn't end up making you swing in the opposite direction when we don't quite hit our calories or we don't quite hit our workouts or we don't quite hit our steps. And think about like this example, with this client where she was feeling guilty because she went over her calories. And think about that emotion of guilt or feeling guilty, and think about other times in your life where you did feel guilty. Those other times you probably did something wrong. Maybe did someone wrong, like you did something wrong to somebody, and you did that and it ended up hurting them in some way. Or you did something that maybe for yourself and your own values you felt was morally wrong, and that resulted in you feeling guilty. But when we think about this scenario, right, like with our calorie goals and this specific client, or, if you were in this situation ever and you go over the calorie goal that you set out to hit that day, there's nothing immoral about eating 2,300 calories instead of 2,000. Because you went over your goal by 300 calories, you're not a bad person because you did that. You didn't hurt anybody else because you did that. And you maybe didn't even necessarily hurt yourself because you did it. Like, sure, maybe if you have a lot of weight to lose, if you have a lot of health issues, maybe long term, if we keep going over our calories by 300, we don't lose weight, and that leads to long term health consequences that could then one day, potentially hurt you. But that's more of a case of having multiple days in a row where you don't hit your calorie goal or you go over your calories, not just one day. Like, one day is not going to be the deciding factor of whether or not you end up, having long-term diabetes or not. So you didn't do anything immoral by going over your calories by a few hundred. And in this case, eating 2,300 instead of 2,000. You didn't hurt anyone else by doing that. And you didn't really hurt yourself much in the short term either. So, if we didn't do anything immoral, we didn't hurt anyone, and we didn't hurt ourselves, why are you attaching so much guilt to this of going over your calories? And this is why when clients go through our program, or, if they're on their own, if I'm having a conversation with someone through DM or something about their fitness goals, is I really try to encourage you to try and eliminate these like strong emotions that you have regarding the process as much as possible. Like I said, like, it's good to have those good emotions, like to use as positive reinforcement when we are doing things well, but try not to let it swing too far high, because then if you do, then when you don't, execute on those things, it's probably going to swing really hard in the opposite direction. And one way that I try to teach clients how to do this, as far as like detaching from the emotion, is go back to like facts and logic. Like, think, really sit back, kind of calm the emotions down and think and ask yourself, like, did this one day ruin my entire week? And the answer to that question is going to be no. One day will never ruin your entire week. Also, kind of think to yourself and ask yourself, just because the scale went up 3 pounds in one day, is it scientifically possible that I actually gained 3 pounds of fat in one day, that all those 3 pounds were actual body fat? And the answer to that question is no. Unless you ate well over 10,000 calories in one day, you're not going to gain 3 pounds of fat in one day. Just for reference and just a reminder, like, a pound of fat has 3,500 calories. So gaining 3 pounds of fat, those 3 pounds of fat that you hypothetically gained are going to include 3,500 times 3, which comes out to 10,500 calories you would have to eat. Plus, you would have to eat how much you actually burned in that day anyway, which, let's say on average is 2,000, which is probably a little bit higher actually than 2,000 on average. But let's just go with 2,000 because it's an easy number to add to. You'd have to eat over 12,000 calories to gain 3 pounds of fat in one day. So when we logically take it through the facts, we know that the 3 pounds of weight gain is not fat that we gained in one day. And kind of ask yourself again too, like, did you go over your calories multiple days and maybe not make progress this week? Possibly. If you went over your calories by 300 every single day, then you probably didn't make progress that week. But even if that's the case, right, that's the worst case scenario, is you overate every single day to the point where maybe you did gain a little bit of body fat. It just is what it is. And instead of feeling guilty about it, instead of having these like negative emotions of, oh, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that better. Like, instead of having all that guilt around it, think like, this is what happened and I got this result, right? Like, I overate my calories by 300 every day or by multiple days this week, and I got this result, and this result is AKA not losing body fat this week. This is something that I didn't want to happen. So what actions do I need to take this next week to actually get the result I want? And then take a look at those actions and then think, okay, so this upcoming week, this is what I need to do if I want to make that progress that like I'm setting out to make. So now you're kind of shifting the focus as far as like, oh, like all these negative emotions, I feel guilty, I feel like I'm a failure and all of this stuff. And you're thinking more like logically, okay, this is a situation, analyze it. What do I need to do this upcoming week to get the result I want? Now, how can I do it? How can I execute on it? And there are obviously like details of that you might need to explore, such as like, if you are going over your calories multiple days a week, like why that's happening. Is it just like a straight up discipline issue? A lot of times, 9 out of 10 times it's not. It's about how you structure your day, and it's about having different strategies to help you stay within your calorie range. So there's more details to explore with that, and to explore like what barriers popped up. But like when you kind of talk yourself through that, and think of things in more an objective lens, that isn't tied to emotions or guilt, it like calms you down. It eases your mind, because it's not so like emotions are things that they feel like in the moment it's hard to change, right? You have this strong emotion that's kind of like built up inside of you. It's hard to just automatically change that in the moment. But if we're thinking more objectively of, okay, these are actions, these are inputs that I'm putting in, and this is the output or result I get, those things, when you think those things through, it feels easier to control those things or to change those things. And also like when we're so emotionally like high strung, especially with this type of journey, it becomes exhausting after a while, and it tears you down over a period of time. Even like really good emotions, sometimes like in the short term, those really good positive emotions can like give you energy, right? Like if you feel super excited because, you've been working really hard, and, you've been really crushing your workouts and feeling really tired after, and just putting in all this work. And then you put on a pair of pants that you haven't worn in a while, and they finally fit. That can be like a huge, like, positive reinforcement that gives you energy short term, and you're like, wow, like I feel really motivated to go out and go for another walk because of that. But if we're like constantly in this like super high, even positive emotional state, eventually there's usually like a crash that comes down where we come down to baseline. Like, I don't know, thinking about like a wedding, for example, or even like my own wedding, right? Like that was a very positive, high emotional event that took place. But it was like after that weekend was over with, of like the rehearsal dinner, the wedding, the reception and everything, like we were all just ready to crash, because we experienced those super high emotions, and even those super high emotions that are positive, eventually there's some kind of crash associated with it. And the same thing goes for these negative emotions, but it's actually even worse, like the exhaustion we feel when we're constantly feeling these feelings of guilt and feeling like we sabotaged ourselves. They build up over time, and they like tear you down. And when you can stay calm and objective, everything seems much more straightforward. And also, you're gonna avoid dealing with that mental exhaustion that comes along with the process of weight loss, because weight loss is a long journey, especially if you have a lot of weight to lose. And it's a long journey of actively achieving the weight loss. And it's also a long journey of learning how to maintain that weight loss. And it's a long journey of then even years down the road, just making sure you don't gain it back. So if you're constantly dealing with this mental exhaustion, you're never going to make it to the end of the road, because you're going to burn out too quickly. And also we know that when we're mentally exhausted, we're more likely to have higher cravings. We're more likely to have higher stress. We're more likely to emotionally eat, or even end up giving up. Like I said, if you're doing something emotionally exhausting for long enough, eventually something's going to give, and you're going to flip that switch and be like, okay, I can't focus on my nutrition or exercise anymore because it's causing me too much stress. It's causing me too many negative feelings. I need to stop. So like my whole point of this, and the purpose of the conversation that I had with her was, don't feel guilty. Like, you're not a bad person because you went over your calories. It just is what it is. It's what happened. It's the action that you took. It's the result that ended up happening. And you have the power and control to this week or the next day, or even, the next meal. You have the power to actually change that, to, make a decision that's going to put you within your calorie goal, so you do succeed and you do see the result you want. And the thing about like nutrition, which is it's a blessing, but then it's also a curse, is one day will not dictate like your results for the next multiple weeks. And it's a curse because if we have one really perfect day, we hit our steps, we hit our calories, we hit our workouts, we crushed everything, we had good nutritious food, we had plenty of fruits and vegetables throughout the day. You have one day that's perfect, and it's still only going to move the needle forward a little bit. No matter how perfect that day is, it will only move the needle forward a little bit. You have to consistently, not be perfect, but you have to consistently, be doing 80% of the right things to, see progress over a long period of time. So that's kind of the curse behind the whole fact of like nutrition and exercise, why one day isn't going to make or break your results for, multiple weeks. But it's also a blessing because if you have one day that is not on point, one day that is far from perfect, like not even at executing at 80%, but maybe at 10%, that one day at 10% isn't going to, drastically push you way backwards either. It's just going to push you backwards a little bit, just like, a perfect day can push you forward a little bit. So that's kind of the blessing behind it. So, if you are on your weight loss journey and you keep finding yourself feeling guilty for going over your calories, and that is causing you to have this kind of mental spiral or downward spiral to then sabotage yourself even more and give up, like really just detach from those emotions and, don't put any kind of like moral label on, I'm a good person if I eat this much, or I'm a good person if I exercise. Think more objectively, like, okay, like almost like this is a machine. Like if I push this button, this is the result I'm going to get. But if I push this button, this is the result I'm going to get. And which button or buttons am I currently pushing that are getting me this result? So how do I change that if that's not the result I want, to push the right buttons? And really think about it that way. And it's something that is probably not going to come overnight. It's going to take time to start shifting your mind to think that way. But once you do, you kind of have this huge mental freedom in this journey and in this process because you're not so emotionally tied to what's going on. So hopefully this was helpful and kind of eye-opening a little bit. Maybe got your head, the wheels turning in your head a little bit. I'm sure, like I said, it's something if you start implementing, it's going to be hard. There are going to be times where you do fall back on those emotions again, but just keep, trying to reframe every time you like find yourself feeling guilty about that. Reframe it in your mind. And keep doing that over and over, and eventually you'll train yourself and train your brain to actually think about it in this way, which will be, like I said, super beneficial for your long-term progress. So, hope you guys are having a great Thursday. Hopefully this was helpful. Also, be on the lookout for some exciting news. Got some new things in the works that I'm putting together for kind of, this fall, which is kind of crazy that like fall is only, I don't know when the official first day of fall is, but September is only a couple of months away, which is mind-blowing. But some really cool stuff coming that I'll be announcing in September that we will be launching probably in October, so just be on the lookout for that. But yeah, that's about it. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Thursday, and I will see you guys in the next one.